Wendy is recording and monitoring the chat, and we've done this a few times now. Thank you so much for being here. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Today we are continuing drafting strategies and really getting into the details. So of refining what we've come up with to date. So really looking forward to getting your help on where we've arrived. So today, refining the strategies and applying the equity screening tool. So things are coming full circle. I think it's going to really help to better explain where we are in the process. We want to make sure you understand those community priorities. We've gone over them several times, so this will just be a chance to actually integrate them into the strategies and connecting to the priorities to climate action and resilience. And then preparing the draft strategies for review by city administration and the RVAgreen 2050 roundtable. So for especially for the staff that are on this working group, we're going to be asking you to take these back to your departments for input as well once they get revised. So you know the ground rules and expectations. We're aiming for consensus. So that's the when you do go into your breakouts, we have several strategies to get through. So really want you to be thinking about, what you can live with, what language we can arrive at to move through them and be aiming for consensus. So back to the draft structure, just to remind everyone who, I know we have some people kind of watching the recordings, but for those of you who haven't been here or missed the last meeting, please speak up if you have any questions. We do want to make sure everyone's on the same page. We've defined the goals, the vision, the community priorities, the pathways, the objectives, and today we're working on the strategies before it goes out for public comment in the month of April, and then we'll be reviewing for implementation steps after that. So this is exciting because we're almost done with all of this hard work that has been building up over the past few months, the foundation setting and drafting strategies. So just to show you, we are actually making a lot of progress. Really grateful for everyone's input. And so between the last meeting and this meeting, you're going to see that staff has done a lot of work to take all of the inputs that you have given us, all of your feedback, all of your priorities, all of your brainstorming, and added the Richmond 300 relevant strategies to come up with a preliminary checklist, and then took those draft strategies and ideas, combined them, moved them to other working groups if it was appropriate, and then today and identifying gaps, adding in our modeling component, and then today we have a revised strategy list for you to review. So what we're focusing on today is making sure that the strategies are strategic, ambitious, and realistic, and then using the equity tool to make sure that they're inclusive and equitable. The measurable and time bound, that's going to take a little more time and thought, and that will come out in the implementation part of this. So for today, focus a little more on the strategic, ambitious, and realistic pieces of the SMARTY process. So again, just to kind of show you where we are, we're refining, and then next, all of these strategies will be going out for review and incorporating city staff and roundtable feedback before it goes out to the broader community in April for their feedback. So as we're working on refining the strategy language, we'll be using the equity screening tool to connect as many strategies as possible to the community priorities. And this will make the strategies and overall plan more equitable and relevant to our community. So the following slides will give a few examples of how those community priorities relate to climate action and resilience. This is an example of um, the transportation and employment and how that relates um, let me back up. In our community listening process, we heard that Richmonders want improved access to well-paying jobs. So most of the jobs in our region are not realistically accessible unless you have a car. And we have a significant portion of the Richmond community that does not have access to a vehicle. So if we focus on providing more efficient and expanded access to transit, we can provide more access to jobs without increasing greenhouse gas emissions from private vehicle travel. So we took that community priority and we looked at it through our climate equity lens, and we're adding the component of um, greenhouse gas reductions and resilience, and we can come up with a good strategy incorporating community, all of the above. This is an example for housing and buildings. So again, we heard that Richmonders want more affordable housing options across the city, and energy costs are a known contributing factor to evictions. And here in Richmond, we see more households of color paying more for their energy bills as part of our energy burden modeling that we've been working on over the past year. So and therefore also facing higher eviction rates. So when you overlay these measures, we can see that if we improve energy efficiency, especially for lower income households, we can also help to reduce that energy burden and the greenhouse gas emissions from electricity use. So energy efficient housing is also more resilient to climate risks such as extreme temperatures. So it all comes together. And this is the way we want to be thinking in our strategies. This one is an example where we heard that Richmonders want more access to green space and parks. So the areas of our city that lack access to these resources are also, one, more likely to face hotter temperatures because of the urban heat island effect, and two, more likely to have been historically segregated through practices such as redlining and have faced disinvestment over the last 100+ years, and also we found that the people of color and people with lower incomes and people who have more pre-existing health conditions are adversely affected. So we want to create strategies that increase green and park space in these areas and address this community priority while also increasing the community's resilience. And then the last example we have for you is with waste, neighborhoods, and health. So we heard that Richmonders want issues such as littering to be addressed in their neighborhoods. We found that people of color are more likely to live near contaminated air, water, and soil. And here in Richmond, they are also more likely to rent versus own their home and therefore may not have access to services such as curbside recycling. That's not a service that we currently offer to apartment complexes and other large multifamily dwellings. So by creating strategies that expand services, such as recycling across the community, we can reduce the amount of waste going to landfills and also provide more waste management options to cut down on litter and contamination. So what we're going to be doing today is revisiting that equity screening tool that we helped to put together back in, was that December, January? And I sent an email out last night. If you got it, there's a PDF attached to it, and that has the 3-page tool with the questions in it. And I'll just kind of walk you through how it's organized. So it's organized by the 7 community priorities gathered during the listening sessions. And the stakeholders in your breakout sessions, each of you should review and answer the suggested questions in each community priority section to help recognize inequities and the conditions under which they thrive and the possible solutions and environments that would mitigate negative effects and enhance positive results. So reminder that equity tools are both products, the document itself, and processes. So this is just an opportunity for us to kind of practice using the screening tool as we develop our strategies. And so our goal is to embed those equity considerations in the brainstorming and drafting of this plan content. So these are the 4 sections we're going to be focusing on today. The community wealth, neighborhoods, health and well-being, and housing and buildings. So we'll be going through each strategy in your small groups, and you're going to consider if or whether it could create jobs, increase affordable housing, expand access to green space, improve health, and if you can add components to the strategy that would get it at some of these priorities, then that would be fantastic. If time allows, we're going to go back to these 3 more procedural elements of the equity screening tool. The community working group is creating objectives and strategies on equitable engagement and government accountability that'll be cross-cutting for all of the strategies, but these are certainly really important. So if we have time in our breakouts to kind of come back and add components that get at these 3 priorities, that would be helpful as well. So today's activity, and I want to pause after this to answer any questions, because I know I'm going through this really quickly, but I think once we get into our breakouts, it's going to make a lot more sense and you can ask small group questions. But to remind you, SMARTY is the framework that we're developing these strategies in. So today we're focusing on the strategic, ambitious, and realistic. So we're taking a statement such as reduce residential water consumption, and we're trying to add those 3 components. An example would be restructure residential water and wastewater fees and billing procedures to incentivize reduced water consumption. But then if we go through the equity tool and we want to consider ways to make it inclusive and equitable, we might add additional language such as, and use clear language and graphics to communicate fees and ways to reduce usage and charges. So that's just an example. And then a second example would be, rather than just increase public parks access, we could say, establish an annual budget for the Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Department to acquire new public park space in neighborhoods with the highest urban heat and island impacts. So again, we'll focus on the metrics and timelines during our summer meetings. So let me pause for a second there and see if anyone has any questions on anything I just discussed. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
All good.
Okay. I'm trying to make my screen bigger so I can see you all at one time. So the activity is going to be breaking up into these groups. There are 4 facilitators. And today we're doing it differently. You're not going to be dragging stars and writing on the Post-its. You are just going to be discussing and contributing in conversation, and the facilitator is going to be taking the notes and sharing their screen so you can go through each one together as a group. So as I read these, think about which objective you are most interested in and or have the most value to share. The first one is achieve climate neutrality and increase resilience in government buildings, infrastructure, and operations. Brianna is going to be facilitating that group, and those are the City of Richmond buildings and facilities. That's basically what we're talking about there. The second objective is maximize energy efficiency, performance, and resilience in all existing buildings. That's with me, and that's all other buildings in Richmond other than the city government buildings, housing, commercial, industrial, all of it. Objective 3 is ensure all Richmonders have equitable access to affordable and renewable clean energy. So that's with Wendy. And then objective 4 is achieve climate neutrality and maximize resilience in all new buildings. And that'll be with David. So the tasks are to fill in and refine the strategy language that you'll be reviewing together. Again, those slides earlier I showed you that had the arrows, you know, all of your feedback has been reviewed and layered and kind of culled and combined to come up with a shorter list of hopefully comprehensive strategies that'll give you a really good, I don't want to say starting place because the starting place was a long time ago, but a good place to build on to get to our final strategies. And then you'll be going through the equity screening tool to continue to refine. If your group finishes early, we do have an hour and 10 minutes. So it's a long time. If you finish early, then you can leave your breakout group and come to the main group. Or if you feel like you've personally added as much as you can and you want to go to one of the other objectives, I'll be in the main room with my group. So feel free to come back to me and I can put you somewhere else. But mostly you're going to have a lot of time to be in that primary objective room that you are most interested in. So with that, do you all, I haven't been paying attention to the chat. So Wendy, is this link in the chat? Okay, so everyone has access to this slide deck. And this is a good reference if you want to refer back to it. But if you could go ahead and open this up, and if you can't open it up and you want to just tell us, we'll type it in for you. But on slide 20, go ahead and write your name under the objective where you would like to go.
Again, if you can't do this, go ahead and just either type your name in the chat and say which objective you want or yell it out, whatever works.
Hey, this is Joe Sarver. I'm not able to type in. Maybe it's a firewall thing or something, but you can add me to objective 2.
Okay.
And I'd encourage some non-City of Richmond folks to hop on objective 1 to keep us honest, please.
And we're going to be taking a 5-minute break. And then we'll go ahead and send you into the breakout rooms. So if you've already put your name down, I'm just going to be spending the next couple minutes kind of getting the room set up. But we're here if you have any questions before we send you off. Just take yourself off mute. Wendy, you're 1, right?
I am going to be number 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who? Oh,
I think I'm number,
Yes.
I'm 1.
Brianne's 1, you're 2. Sorry if I messed you up from what you
No, we're just trying to remember.
I was trying to match people to the tasks. Okay.
So I see that we don't have very many folks for objective number 4. My first choice is objective number 3, but do you want any of us to, I would be happy to start with objective number 4 if I could then jump to number 3 or vice versa.
That'd be great if you want to go to 4, and then when you've contributed as much as you can come back and I'll put you in 3.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Arlene.
Thanks, Serena.
Okay, so let's see. For the first one, I have Bree. Wendy. And Eric. Carrie.
And has everybody had a chance to get their name on one of the objectives?
And then for
Send people
4,
on break.
This is Don. Can you put me on number 4? That's the same issue Joe's having.
yes.
Thank you.
And Irina. And David. Let's see. Josh. Okay, I hope I have you all in the right place, and I have Alicia and Kendra staying back. So I'm going to go ahead and open all rooms, and if you end up in the wrong place, please come back and I'll send you in the right one.
Are we taking break first or no? Or no?
Well,
We don't have to.
yeah, people can just come back when they're ready. I think it's
Okay.
in a few minutes, so take a break if you need it. Otherwise, I'm going to send you in your rooms, okay?
I didn't want to mess up the counting, but can I go into 4?
Yes, and you know what? I created a room and I shouldn't have. So I have to get all my people back.
Oh,
So I am, ugh. Hold on just a second. All right, so it looks like I have Alicia. Who else is with me? All right, just a second.
I think Josh wanted to go to 4.
Yeah, I need to get room 2 and bring them back to me because I'm 2. Oh, Josh, he's in 4. He's just not joined yet. But all the group 2 ones I need to bring back. Well, I'll be back.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
Leander, that phone number, when you call in, you may not end up in the subgroup.
Okay.
Anyway, Eric, do you wanna?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Eric Brooks, I am the manager of the.
Oh, who's on 703-599-0105? Okay, looks like they left. All right, so this is everyone who wants to talk about, let me make sure, maximize energy efficiency, performance, and resilience in all existing buildings. Yes?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to share my screen. Let me show you what I'm looking at. All right, so these are the strategies that we have, and I don't know if you can all see it. I know everyone has different monitors and screen capability, and they're kind of small, but we have it's like about 15 to 20 to talk about. So let's just start with this first one and see how this goes. You guys are the very first group doing this, so we are open for suggestions, feedback, all of the above. And the first one is develop a guide for high performance and net zero energy in new construction and historic retrofits to encourage green construction practices. So do you like the way that sounds? Could we say it better? Could it be more strategic, more ambitious, more realistic?
So, just a quick question. We're existing buildings, and this is new construction. Does it have to be edited so it fits us, or is this something bigger than us?
Develop guide for high performance net zero energy. Okay, so that's a great, thank you for that catch.
Renovation.
Yeah.
Historic retrofit or renovation, historic. It's already.
I'm gonna just copy it and put it here and make the changes. So develop a guide for high performance net zero energy retrofits.
Renovation.
Renovations. To encourage green construction or just green practices.
Yep.
I was about to say, shouldn't it be refer folks to existing guides? Because those guides exist, have been developed by other folks.
Yeah.
If it's just like a handbook of building techniques, if it's like a community resources, like list of energy auditors, lists of, certified, I don't know, architects who are LEED credentialed.
I like that. Develop a guide.
Yeah, I mean, a community resource guide.
How about we're facilitating access, like so the city of Richmond makes it easy for people to find these resources.
Right.
My question would be, where does the line stop before you start promoting a LEED program, a passive house program, an earthcraft program? Where does the line stop that the city cannot, say, use this program, use this auditor or architect? You know what I mean? You keep the terminology, the verbiage where, it's kind of like it's really vague.
Well, Bill, I think that's a good comment, but I suggest that that's part of the implementation, and we just like make it vague right now, and then later on, when people are working on implementing, they they consider the rules and other things.
What do you think, Alicia? Aren't you a lead certified?
I have my lead AP, but to your question, I think Michael's answer is correct. Right now, what we're trying to do is draft the strategy language, and when the working groups come back, we're drafting this strategy language so that we can send it out to the community in April for feedback. And then you all in the working groups will be coming back together after that engagement. So through May through July, and doing more work on refining these strategies, and then moving to what Michael's talking about, which is getting into more details on selecting or developing metrics on how to measure these strategies, the progress on them, and also implementation steps, and helping us identify, who are the responsible parties for most likely for implementation and those kinds of things. So it's helpful to, start thinking about some of those things now. Probably it's going to be natural they come up in conversation, and we can certainly capture those thoughts in notes. But yeah, not really getting into a lot of those details at this point in time as we're talking about it.
All right, so this isn't beautifully written, but does it capture what we're trying to say? Develop a community resource guide and facilitate access to the community.
Yeah, I think with 20 of these, that's close enough, in my opinion.
Okay, great. Then the next one, work with allied organizations to have the Board of Housing and Community Development adopt the most recent International Energy Conservation Code for all new and existing commercial and residential buildings.
Well, we have the new issue again, so we could just say for all existing.
Okay.
Yeah, that code would apply to gut rehab retrofits. So it deals with existing buildings as well.
Okay.
A question, when we're using the term green construction, that is not just energy, right? I mean, it's also using low VOC compounds and non-irritant compounds. Am I right on that, or?
Yes.
Do we need to clarify that any?
I don't think at this point. Let's keep going down, and I think that might come up again a couple times.
Okay.
All right, so then the third one is expand programs to aid homeowners in implementing energy efficiency and stormwater upgrades, including establishing residential PACE, property assessed clean energy.
Now there you go. There you go. You just nailed a specific program. I heard it worded as on-bill financing, which gave it a more broader scope. But I don't know. Help me out. Am I wrong in that?
My thought on this is that it's a program that has to be passed at the state level first. So Richmond actually can't launch that yet for residential.
Right.
Aren't there some loan programs that are coming into play now that involve green building mortgages and construction loans, if that have green incentives?
Energy efficiency mortgages, yeah. ResNet's had them, but they're not used. I've never heard anybody using them.
Yeah, I mean,
I've done one in 20 years.
I've just been hearing about them a little more lately, but don't have any direct experience with it. But I know that's something that is being bannered about.
Well, to me, the issue with this one, it says expand programs to aid homeowners in implementing. Does the
Would
city
that include rebates and things like that for goods used?
I mean, is this an action the city can take to expand programs
Well, we're thinking
Mhm.
ambitious, you know, over the next 20 years. So I'm wondering if we should define programs a little more, or we could leave it general. Should we take PACE off since that's a specific program?
It fits
Well,
fine.
couldn't you just say such as instead of including?
What do you think, Jessica?
Maybe develop programs and expand partnerships.
Stormwater seems to be a pretty commercialized addition to that statement. Should that be pulled out and used elsewhere?
Stormwater out.
Yeah, and use that with an infrastructure topic type statement, and not so much with this, you know.
Yeah, there is a resilience component to that, but maybe it's addressed further down. Like you're
Yeah,
saying.
infrastructure of some sort. Whereas this thing, you're talking about homeowners, and so homeowners not really gonna get into that stormwater thing.
Well, I think they do, but maybe for the point of this strategy, we keep it to energy efficiency.
Right. Yeah.
And
What do
don't
you
we want to
think?
include
Good?
water though? I mean, it's not just energy.
You mean energy or water conservation?
Yes. Energy and water efficiency or conservation.
Energy.
Thoughts? What do others think? Energy and water efficiency.
Well, you could say energy.
How about just sustainability? And capture it all. Sustainability improvements.
I'd be okay with that.
So I kind of push back on that a little for the reason that the strategies in this bucket are supporting the objective. So I maybe would ask you guys to think about, if you're struggling with wording, to kind of refer back each time to this specific objective that we're working on these strategies supporting, if that's helpful. And we're trying to be as specific as possible also, if that's helpful too. And the strategy or the objective wording, it's a little hard to see. Maybe we could slide the spreadsheet over a little, Dawn, but it's written on the side of the, up and down on the side of the, or up at the top.
Energy efficiency, performance, and resilience in all existing buildings.
Yeah, there you go. So I don't know if that's helpful to kind of keep referring back to that.
All right, well, right now we have.
I would really throw, this is somewhat selfish, but not just expand programs, but expand partnerships, because inevitably there will be, I mean, the city won't ever be the deployer of federal weatherization funds, for example, and Project Homes, our local weatherization provider, is, you know, doing that and expanding that dramatically to great benefit.
Okay, well, let's energy efficiency upgrades. Let's leave it at that for now, and we can always come back. So the next one, increase city funding for energy efficiency upgrades and home repair programs to assist low and moderate income homeowners, track and report funding and impact on utility bills annually. And if you feel like any of these should be combined, we can do that too.
Wow, silence for once. Sounds like we can keep that one.
Well, does the recently passed, what is it, the PIPP, doesn't it address the utility bills for low income folks where it's capped based off their income?
Well, it's not capping utility bills here. What we're doing is helping them become more efficient.
Right. In order for them, I mean, there's a part of that that includes energy efficiency measures in those homes. And as a part of that, they also there's a cap on the utility bill moving forward, as far as what they pay, and the rest of it's paid for by other ratepayers. So I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying to track that annually. I mean, I guess if you just want to track it, that's fine. But I feel like sometimes we may be doing some things and they might be kind of redundant because it's being done in other.
Okay, so potentially, so that's electricity, but we also have natural gas. And maybe in the implementation section, we could spell out some specifics.
Okay, that sounds good.
It's already being done, but I hear you. That's great. Thank you for sharing. Great point. Create a commercial property assessed clean energy program.
I would suggest
What does
maybe
that mean?
just adding or join the statewide program once launched.
What is at the core of that too, that CPACE thing? Is it requires a green bank? Now, Andrew, did you ever speak to Bill Greenleaf about that green bank thing? And what role does that play?
Jessica's your expert on PACE.
Okay, Jessica, does it require a green bank? Am I wrong?
No, it does not require a green bank. There's several different banks that come to mind. John Marshall, Eagle, they're big ones in DC that are funding them. It's just working with any capital provider.
Okay, so it's not, all right, doesn't require a specific type of financial institution, just one that's willing to get into it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
All right, so this next one, advocate for the General Assembly to adopt enabling legislation allowing localities to require residential energy benchmarking and public disclosure and adopt a local ordinance.
Now that goes back to my question earlier about, utility bill accessibility. You target energy benchmarking. And you guys did start that Energy Star portfolio thing, right?
We have it for public
Public buildings.
Government buildings.
Right.
But anyone can join it. It's free.
The private sector can go and become part of your.
Mm-hmm. They can benchmark their buildings.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll leave that one for now. We're going to come back to all of these and put the equity tool over them. Just want to make sure that we've kind of gone through them once together. So develop, administer, and promote a voluntary green business challenge and/or certification program. All right. Promote the use of combined heat and power in industrial facilities and the use of PACE to finance combined heat and power systems.
Sorry, I was thinking through the previous one about Green Business Challenge. I'm just wondering if it might be more effective as a regional thing rather than just this city.
Promote a regional voluntary green.
Right. I just don't know if the city is the entity to do that. Just throwing that idea out there because we're such, Willow Lawn is not part of the city, Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, so going back to starting with what we have control over, and also thinking about, you know, measuring emissions, and we're tracking emissions, totally understanding big picture, and of course things don't stop at the city's border, but just in terms of, you know, how we're, the scope of this plan, and measuring things within the city of Richmond. You know, we can certainly consider, you know, a regional program, but I think just logistically and practically, it makes sense to maybe start with focusing on starting a program like this within the city of Richmond border, and then perhaps either expanding it or, but frankly, we tried to do this years ago, and with the Chamber of Commerce, the Retail Merchants Association, and it was extremely difficult just within the city of Richmond to try to get something, this type of program started up and running. So hopefully, you know, things have changed and since years ago, but just from that past experience, I would say just starting within the city of Richmond would be a heavy enough lift.
Indeed.
Ambitious enough.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew, I think just like with Solarize, you know, we each are a little different, but definitely partnering and trying to make the reach bigger could be part of implementation.
Right. Well, even that other word, administer, is the, do y'all really want to administer it? Just asking.
So how about, should we just say develop and promote?
Yeah.
Okay, back to combined heat and power. Is that good as is?
Sure.
All right, use the RVAgreen 2050 Climate Equity Index to prioritize households with the highest utility burden for promotion of energy efficiency retrofit programs.
Maybe that could be combined with a prior one.
Which, the energy efficiency, where did we have that?
That's the one,
This
yeah.
one, expand program.
That says homeowners.
Prioritize households, yeah, so there might be a difference between
Yes.
homeowners and
Yeah,
households.
row 31, you might substitute households. Because there are programs available to renters.
To aid, this one should be households.
I think that'd be more inclusive.
And then we're gonna combine with the other one, the equity tool.
Prioritize the,
So develop, so we can rewrite this later, but you think that, is there any other language we should add to these components?
I mean, you might, I mean, the climate equity index, I think it's great. Maybe to, is it the only one? Is it the only tool to use to prioritize, or could it be to assist in prioritizing? Just asking.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe it's just prioritize households, and we can figure out how we do that. So
how should I rewrite this?
And Dawn, if you want, I can work on combining those two and rewriting it while you move on to the next one, and then everybody can go back and look at it if you would like, if that's helpful.
So develop metrics to measure the impact of energy efficiency improvements.
In an earlier one, we said we were gonna, help homeowners or households and then track it. And this one is develop methods to track. So yeah, we clearly have to track it, but maybe this is, maybe this should stay because we need to develop those methods. And then maybe, I was wondering when it was first said earlier, whether we have to say track it in anything because these are going to be measurable. So obviously we're going to measure something. So it seemed a little redundant over the, with Smarty
Yep.
overlying everything.
Yep, good idea. All right, I'll just make that note there. Work with refrigerant recycling and disposal operators to promote the benefits of switching to HFC alternatives.
It's pretty surgical right there. But if I may, can I ask Joe, the verbiage of the last thing, develop metrics to measure the impact, blah, blah, blah. Joe, what do you think? You've been in this industry. Do you see any change in that verbiage? Do you see any other wording we could use for that? That would help?
I don't know. I was actually the one, I think, that maybe suggested that at one of the earlier meetings we had, because I think we do need to be able to measure the improvement
over
for
time.
Is that, I might suggest use existing best practices. I mean, there are, in commercial buildings, there's ASHRAE metrics for energy efficiency, residential.
But Andrew, it's a good point, because when you sit down with the consultants or the technicians or the superintendents, everyone is kind of measuring something different. So to really get around a table and decide what we're all measuring, maybe which standard or what we're going to go by, maybe that is important.
Well, most design professionals would rely on ASHRAE standards, just so you know. I did energy work quite a bit in the 80s, and we would always do audits on commercial, municipal buildings like the city has. And we would look at their energy consumption and compare that to a ASHRAE standard for building in that geographic region. So, we are going to be comparing them to some standard.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just promulgate existing best practices in energy efficiency, in energy metrics.
I'd be okay with that. I guess the main point is we want to have a measuring stick.
Yeah. But I wouldn't suggest, creating something new out of whole cloth and exacerbating the problem of everyone, using something different. We want to use what most people are already using or should be using.
Yeah, I would say compared to prevailing standards for energy efficient buildings, something along that line.
All right. It is important though, so I'm sure in implementation we'll have some good language under that. Okay, just a few more, then we'll kind of go back through with the equity tool. So promote the benefits of electric-only commercial and residential construction, starting in areas of highest utility burden using the RVAgreen 2050 Climate Equity Index.
That's another one that sounds like new construction. So I guess if we just changed construction to retrofit or renovation.
All right, vigorously enforce letter and spirit of current building code provisions related to energy efficiency requirements. Train building inspectors and plan reviewers accordingly.
Wow, that sounds like something that needs to be moved up in priority. We already have codes, and this implies they're insufficiently enforced. Hmm.
Yeah, well, I think what happens is there are just so, when you're dealing with limited, inspectors, and there are just so many components that go into this that kind of elevating that enforcement and training.
So maybe another component of that is not just train, but expand, not just train inspectors and reviewers, but expand department capabilities in order to vigorously enforce. So maybe the whole thing starts out with, Don, you were just saying they're kind of overworked. So we need to expand the department's capabilities such that they can achieve this, which anyone, I think the public would expect that's what this happens.
There's an issue going on where the building enforcement community is actually retiring at a larger rate and scale than any other working sector in the construction industry. So, vigorously enforce, it's going to be hard when the forces against you are retiring demographic. I don't know if it needs to be addressed in here. I don't know how you would address it, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, this one gets at jobs, right?
I mean, could we say something like cultivate the capacity to have building inspectors?
There you go. Sounds good.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Cultivate the capacity to have building inspectors of
Influx, new kids come in. Well, how would you word that? The STEM program. STEM is a new term. You know what I mean? I don't know. How would you guys? How would you say that? Get
Fully
these young
staffed building inspector departments.
staff building efforts. Yeah.
All right, we can work on the language later, but yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Divert investment in gas utility upgrades to converting targeted areas to all electric.
Oh, I wonder about just the targeted areas. I like the sound of it without targeting.
To converting targeted areas.
That came from a Dominion employee.
Actually, that came from me because I just watched he make enormous investment in the street right in front of my house. It was great entertainment for my young boys, but it got us through last summer COVID. But within a year, I'm cutting the cord to the gas.
Yay!
So, they reran my line because they had to then, but I would have taken the cash instead of, God knows what it costs to give me a new gas line. In as much as long term, the gas utility is going to be a stranded asset. I mean, this is just like starting to really think about that. Where I know we need to stop leaking pipes now and serve people who want gas now and are going to have it for a while. But it might be smart to start thinking about that strategically.
So why are you saying targeted areas?
Well, maybe that's maybe it's not targeted. I don't know if it's targeted areas, but certainly it's targeted customers.
And are we limiting this to all electric?
It's electrification, decarbonization. That's what.
Well, to non, I guess. I mean, that would be the goal, I think, from a carbon standpoint. That, certainly it's generally widely held that to achieve carbon neutrality, we are we're pursuing electrification as much as possible.
Yeah, but we could just be more general if we said divert investment in gas utility upgrades to converting to electric. to electric conversion.
Right. I mean, it also might be, you know, if this particular neighborhood, say you have a neighborhood where the existing infrastructure in the street is going to take, I don't know, what's the number? 10 million to fix, and it serves 100 houses. I'm just throwing out numbers. They may be crazy, but what's the cost? You know, you might go to those 100 houses and say, hey, we'll give each of you $50,000 to go all electric, and in turn the city will save, you know, tons of money. I don't know if those are the right numbers. You know, the numbers may be such that it doesn't make sense, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are in fact neighborhoods where it may be much more cost effective for the city.
So you're saying we would incentivize people to do that?
When it's cost effective for the city, or I mean, and even I would even expand that cost effective should take in the cost of carbon, but we may not be there.
Yeah, I think you'd have to determine the feasibility of doing that, like the cost benefit or just the cost to do it. I mean, that's going to be a big one.
Right. Well, what I'm saying, if it costs the city $10,000 to upgrade the gas line to a house, and that resident would gladly take $5,000 and cut the cord to gas, sounds like the city just saved $5,000. That's what I'm saying. And potentially reduce the city's climate footprint.
So you could probably do that first to areas that don't experience power outages, things like that on a regular basis. Because if you're all electric and a lot of your heat's supported by gas, you're going to be struggling. So I think that's one of the areas you would probably hit first.
If you have gas heat, you rely on a pump or a fan to circulate that heat through your house, other than a gas log.
Right, right.
So I think that when we go through the equity tool, we might want to add some additional language to this, but maybe we move on for now.
Sure.
Encourage Michigan Gas Works to use the RVAgreen 2050 Climate Equity Index to prioritize households with the highest utility burden and create programs that provide customers on-bill financing for energy efficiency investments. All right, I'm going to keep going.
Well, I have a question, just
Yeah.
a general question. So is the climate index, does that exist now?
Yes. Yeah, that's the mapping tool that we showed in earlier meetings.
Right. Okay.
Okay, heavily promote resources for energy audits, retrofits, and related financing via all available outlets and methods.
So Dawn, just sorry, real quick, going back to the previous one, maybe following along the lines of what we've done with the other, couple of the other strategies is just to generalize, get rid of the specific reference to the climate index, and we could just say, encourage Richmond Gas Works to prioritize households with the highest utility burden, and leave the specific way to do that, you know, out of the strategy. And I can do that while you move on to the next one, but if that's okay with folks.
All right, so are we good with heavily promote resources for energy audits, retrofits, and related financing?
I just want to throw a question out there. Have we did anything here to keep from this to any of these programs being directed from, you know, people, the demographic who may be able to pay for an energy audit or an energy efficiency upgrade? We are heavily invested in our low income neighborhoods here, but are we keeping out that population that may be able to pay for these investments, you know, or at least thinking of it? It just came to me. I mean, we want to help our at need communities, absolutely. But is any of this language keeping us from?
I see that one as neutral. I mean, it doesn't specify market rate or low income.
Yeah, I agree.
there are resources. I mean, for example, when I get someone who happens to call us, one of my first questions is, do you think you qualify for a low income program? Are you over 65 or are you a veteran? Because Dominion Energy Share will, if you're a, it's not all just low income. So it's part of communicating all resources about energy services out there to the community, low income or not.
Okay, so I think that's good for now then. And we'll kind of put that equity lens over it and see if we want to add anything. Benchmark existing commercial buildings over 20,000 square feet before and after retrofits to establish a baseline and conduct ongoing measuring and tracking in conjunction with energy audits.
Who came up with the 20,000 square feet?
I did.
And was there, where did you use as a rationale?
We've been collecting benchmarking ordinances from all the other cities that have enacted them, and just looking at the language in those and the size of our community and the building stock that we have here. So
No, sounds good. That sounds great. I was just curious for my own purposes, because actually I've seen that number used before, and I was wondering, does something happen with the scope of a building once you hit 20,000 square feet?
Is that a threshold for ASHRAE, maybe?
Yeah, maybe, right.
It might also be Energy Star.
Is it an Energy Star criteria, a portfolio?
I'm trying to remember. I've seen that number before too. So it's a good question though. Rank final strategies in terms of effort and cost in order to tackle low effort, low cost strategies quickly. I think that's more of an implementation. That's not really a strategy.
Sounds good though.
Okay. Advocate for additional resources for energy efficiency upgrades from the General Assembly and via utility regulation.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Require retro commissioning for existing commercial buildings.
Sounds good.
And require a building performance standard for existing commercial buildings.
I think that's in the code now, isn't it, Joe?
I don't know, to be honest.
No. Sounds good, keep it.
So what we're going to do now, is go back and look at this idea of community wealth. So I don't know if you guys have this PDF, but I'll share it with you here. So community wealth, priority considerations are, does this support historically disenfranchised communities through workforce development, contracting opportunities, or increased diversity of employees and staff across sectors? Are the benefits accessible to households and businesses throughout the community, particularly communities of color, low-income populations, and minority, women, and emerging small businesses? Will this create workforce training opportunities that offer living wages and support a product or service wanted and needed in the community? And then additional considerations are things like, are workforce opportunities free of exclusionary restrictions like criminal history, education, and credit? Could this increase opportunities for living wage jobs near where people live? And does this distribute resources across the city? Suggested data and metrics, I think we can revisit that later. So in thinking about that idea of community wealth, let's look again at these.
So should it hit more than one of those possibilities? I mean, it's not yes or no, right? It's like,
no,
yeah, a little
what I
bit.
want to ask now is, if the language includes it, I'd like to make a note. of how it includes it, and if it doesn't, but it could be refined or expanded to include co-benefits, then we want to capture that too. So in all of the strategies, this is where you have to put your thinking hats on. All those strategies we just went through, and we can walk through them together, or you can just think back on what we talked about. Are there components, as I read through that, about community wealth that we could add to our strategies? We talked about,
Dawn, could I just checking the time and knowing how many, we've got all of these to work through, and just wondering if it might make sense as a thought to maybe go through the first strategy as a group and each of these areas of the racial equity screening tool, and showing folks how to kind of think through it, and then maybe either breaking the rest of the strategies up and asking folks to kind of either go through it on their own or sort of talk in mini groups or something. My thought is just with the little bit of time we have left, we're not going to get through them all if we kind of work through one by one in each portion of the tool. Just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts were.
well, I'm open for suggestions. We're going through 4 of them today: the community wealth, affordable housing, beautiful, safe neighborhoods, and health.
Right.
And so we want to be thinking kind of in general. I wasn't necessarily going to walk through every one with every tool, because not every single one of these has to hit all of those community priorities.
Mm-hmm.
But we do kind of want to do a, kind of a wash of them. So yeah, I agree. We don't have time here in the next 30 minutes to go through every single one. But what are y'all's thoughts on how community wealth how we could build that into, or if you'd rather go through all of them at once, we can do that.
Yeah, I think it'd be more efficient to do the 4 categories, the 4 items we're supposed to be checking for.
Okay.
And then in each line, start talking about whether it does it.
Okay, so then there's community wealth, and there's housing and buildings. So that's where the priority considerations are. Will this reduce the number of families that are cost burdened by housing and transportation? Does this reduce inequities in housing and building quality related to health and safety, such as issues related to lead, mold, air quality, etc.? And could this increase access to housing in general and to home ownership? And if you have this PDF, you can read additional considerations. And then neighborhoods, the priority considerations are: could this expand access to healthy, clean, and accessible transportation? Could this increase access to quality green space in historically disenfranchised communities? Could this increase and ensure long-term access to amenities in historically disenfranchised communities? And then for health and well-being, does this address the health impacts of climate change? Could this reduce food insecurity? Could this reduce stress, anxiety, and depression, and increase happiness? So again, we're focused on buildings and energy, so not every one of those questions is relatable, but so with that said, I'm looking for feedback. Do you want to just go through developing a guide for high performance net zero energy in develop a community resource guide and facilitate access to the community for high performance net zero energy renovations and historic retrofits to encourage green practices? Is there an equity component to that we could add, or does it have it already?
I mean, I'm sort of scanning through this. I mean, I see all of these as contributing positively to all of the, I don't have any no's. I'm sort of searching to find where do I have any no's to
Could they be
these.
made better to prioritize?
Well, I think, yeah, I agree with Andrew that everything we do would benefit health, for example, and would benefit neighborhoods, and most of them, or many of them, are talking particularly about subsidies that could help low-income people achieve the same thing. So in general, they all do this. The question, they all do all four, or you can come up with a convoluted way in which they do, or something. But I guess the question is, are they built with that in mind? And like the first one isn't really, I don't think. I mean, somebody's going to object and say, yes, but it could, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, is it built that way? I could see that people with less access to the internet and less access to, to doing any retrofit, inability to do any retrofit would be kind of shut out of this one in the absence of the kinds of funding and stuff that we talk about in other ones. So
I think the education piece and the engagement is the big push. Like we can create a guide, but how do we know that it's going to be accessible to the people we really want it to be accessible?
yeah.
It seems like another action. Develop a program where contractors are incentivized to hire local labor. You know what I mean? It sounds like a whole nother step,
That again, Bill, that was good.
To incentivize the builders and developers to hire local labor.
I'm not sure if that's where that strategy, that's a good one though, because certainly all of this work is job related.
Local low income labor. I mean, I hate to say that because that's definitely stigmatizing, but local labor.
So maybe I'll actually put that in this one. I think the affordable housing piece of it, Joe, what are your thoughts on
I
how
was just thinking, HUD actually does that in their boilerplate contracts as far as incentivizing contractors to use low-income labor and local labor. I'm not sure that the city could get away with that. I don't know. I was just sort of thinking about that. But that's our boilerplate language in our public contracts is Section 3, utilization of Section 3 labor. Contracts are awarded based on the contractor's ability to use low-income labor.
SWAME, SWAME.
I think that the Beautiful and Safe Neighborhoods, the waste group is attacking construction debris, but making sure that, those practices are kind of across the board is really important.
Do we want to go into language of women and minority contractors? I mean, do we want to get that deep into it?
Like SWAM.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically how the government covers themselves. That's how they word it, isn't it, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, now there are SWAM certifications that not just anybody is a SWAM. You have to sort of be certified as a SWAM entity. So
how about the next one on building codes or International Energy Conservation Code? Are there other aspects of the equity tool that would relate to that? allied organizations.
On the code, well, yeah, I mean, Veridian just developed a whole slew of resources for code enforcement. Oh, you're talking about code
But
up?
related to community wealth, affordable housing, beautiful, safe neighborhoods, or health. Or racial equity, equitable engagement, government accountability. Anything that we want to add to that strategy? Or does it already?
Yeah, I think it does already. I mean, it helps people keep their money in their pockets.
And program, let's see, prioritize households with the highest utility burden, develop programs and expand partnerships to aid these households in implementing energy efficiency upgrades and retrofits. So that does get it, affordable housing.
Yes, I agree with that.
Health, yeah. Check mark on the health box.
Air quality, is that what we're talking about there?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, how about increased city funding for energy efficiency upgrades and home repair programs to assist low and moderate income homeowners, track and report funding and impact on utility bills annually?
Yeah, it's a yes for affordable housing.
And, okay.
Oh, to community wealth as well.
You know, one aspect of community health that wasn't in the description is the possibility of for homeowners, the possibility that it's going to raise the value of the property.
For community wealth.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like building equity.
Yeah. Okay, I like that too. So on which one? The aid homeowners?
Yeah. Build equity.
All right. Create a commercial pace program. What could we add to this that would make it more equitable?
Incentivize builders and developers to hire local labor. Make that a catchphrase and attach it to everything. Especially to this one. This is for commercial, so.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
What was the language you said? Incentivize
Incentivize builders and developers to hire local labor, women and minorities.
Okay. Advocate for the General Assembly to adopt enabling legislation allowing localities to require residential energy benchmarking and public disclosure and adopt a local ordinance.
Energy benchmarking.
one more thing on my list.
Well, this certainly helps with energy burden. So, I mean, it all does, but.
Yeah, I would say that sort of helps affordable housing too.
All right, develop and promote a voluntary green business challenge and or certification program. Where is the equity in that? I think if we, especially if it was geared towards small businesses and, you know, mom and pop shops and.
Yeah, that would certainly be community wealth. And presumably the idea is this helps them thrive. So that's beautiful, safe neighborhoods.
I'm also thinking that, you know, a lot of times when we do those programs, the ones that are already doing it, it's just a chance for them to self-promote. So we want to make sure that we're leveling the playing field and we're really helping the ones that need the help. So is there a way to add that?
Yeah, I'd say this is one where there's some real details to work out to ensure that equity is part of it. And like you said, it's not just a celebration for a few businesses who I mean, good for them, they're already doing it, but it may not have an equity aspect.
Okay. The heat and power, industrial facilities. You know, this is making me think of environmental justice issues and frontline communities.
It's health as well.
Air quality near industrial facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, here again, it might be in the details. I mean, if someone reads this and says, "Oh, okay, well, I'll start burning coal in my, you know, machine shop and generate electricity off of it." I mean, that's what no one imagines, but you know, I'm just sort of wondering where it could go. The idea is that this is taking existing fossil burning equipment and making that do double duty. So we just need to be clear about that. That we're not expanding emissions in neighborhoods.
Promulgate existing best practices and prevailing standards to measure the impact of energy efficiency improvements.
Well, that also saves money. So, you know, there'd be some positive economic impact to people in that community. And it helps affordable housing stay affordable.
Now, you know, sometimes you hear about these upgrades. So building owners offsetting the costs of the upgrades onto the renters. Is there any additional language we should add to that strategy that would make it more equitable? I feel like that one needs, oh, that's the metrics one. So that'll be kind of probably added to others somehow. The one on refrigerant recycling and disposal operators to promote the benefits, could be a jobs component.
Mhm.
Any language that we want to add to that? You know, partnering, incentivizing, jobs training.
I mean, there might be, some people fight that because of the expense. So work with state and regional partners to identify funding to help support that switching.
Okay. Promote the benefits of electric-only commercial and residential retrofits starting in areas of highest utility burden. I think that one definitely gets at energy burden. We have all of that modeling that shows that the Black and brown communities in Richmond have the highest energy burdens. So, all right, how about the building codes and inspectors? Certainly this is job creation. What else could we, anything else we could add to that?
Do some of the attraction of young, female and minority participants in the, building code administration services. Attract workforce development. Yeah.
When I think about inspectors, based on my experience in local government, they are trying to get through those work orders and trying to get out there, and they certainly want to, the developers are economic drivers, and sometimes politics are involved, and they're trying to get it done as fast as they can. And if they spend too much time on any one job, then the developer is going to go somewhere else. And so if we have this really strong code enforcement department, is there some way we can also, kind of make it good for all?
Attract younger participants. Job create workforce development. Attract younger demographic for code enforcement positions, and make it more fun.
That's age discrimination issue.
I know. I don't
It
really
has
want
to
to
be
say
avoided.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? That's a shame. Because it's old. Every time I went
It's
to
not
get
your age. It's your attitude, right?
it's your yeah, exactly.
Like
But
I'm ancient, but I have a young attitude. I'd like to think.
And we see that every time you speak, Michael.
Just fishing for compliments here.
No, but what I'm saying is also it's known, historically known, going to the building department to pull permit. Oh my God, it takes forever. Everybody's dragging their feet. It's stodgy. Look at Andrew smiling. I know it's right down the street from you, Alicia. It's right down your office. Nah, everybody's there. Whoa, geez, I gotta get a permit. Ugh. So, and create some excitement down there.
Okay, how about divert investment in gas utility upgrades to converting targeted areas to all electric. There's that targeted areas. How could we make this inclusive and equitable? Probably, rebates in low income or the highest energy burden, things along that line.
I'm sure Dominion Power would pay for some of that too, you know what I mean? How could you word, you know, local, attract local utility, electrical utility to fund, you know, fuel switching? Fuel switching was a no-no for the longest time because
Yeah, I don't think Dominion would partner with something like that.
you don't think so?
No.
Pay for the rehabilitation of gas systems to all electric? It's
Yeah, I don't
kind
think that's something Dominion would touch at this time.
Well, if the city, the city is the gas provider. If the city agreed to it, it wouldn't be. It's not like they're, aggressive stance with each other. You know.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just identify funding opportunities and rebates. Any thoughts?
That's a good
Yeah, I mean,
idea.
I guess if the city of Richmond reached out to Dominion Power for a project like that, that might be something they could discuss. But I think you would have to determine if that's feasible as well.
Yeah, it's sensitive for sure. Okay. GasWorks using the Climate Equity Index. I think that is obviously all of the above. Anything you want to add to it? Provide customers on-bill financing for energy efficiency investments. Heavily promote resources for energy audits, retrofits, and related financing via all available outlets and methods.
A little aggressive there.
It is.
Andrew.
I think that could kind of be combined a little too. I think we're getting kind of redundant. Unless I'm missing something. If you have any thoughts, throw them at me. Benchmarking existing commercial buildings to establish a baseline and conduct ongoing measuring and tracking in conjunction with energy audits. Okay, so let's think about all these big buildings in Richmond. We're gonna, potentially require that they benchmark their buildings. Are they gonna leave Richmond? What can we do to help them? Are they already doing it? What's some language that might make this a little more realistic? And also,
Alicia, have you ever thought about developing a field crew that you send out to these buildings by themselves? Like a 2 or 3 man team, and just call the building owner up and says, "Hey, you're up. We're going to take a look at your infrastructure, your heating system, your windows, your cell. We're going to do an energy audit on your building as a team member of the city." To a city-owned facility. Have you done that? Are you thinking about doing that?
No, we have not done it, and that's not something we're currently contemplating.
You didn't even think about that. I think you should do it. I think you should hire me to do it, along with Joe, 2 or 3 of us, maybe a half a dozen, and we'll go and building by building, we'll audit them.
Well,
And Dawn,
let me
you could
ask
do.
Joe.
Joe's good. Yeah, he's the guy.
So Joe,
go ahead.
In terms of benchmarking your buildings, is that feasible? Is that realistic? What would it take?
Well, again, just kind of wearing my energy auditor hat. Well, one thing that we would do right off the bat is just monitor the utility consumption via their bills, and compare that to the norms of the time. So that would be as far as ongoing measuring. It might be as simple as being able to monitor the building's utility bills.
So Michael, with the hospital, and I don't know if, I guess, medical facilities over 20,000 square feet. What do you know about benchmarking them and ongoing measuring and tracking and energy audits?
Any in-house
They-
staff?
They
In-house
clearly
staff?
keep close track of their energy costs and energy, well, more the costs than anything else. But I don't know if there's a benchmark to which they compare it. I think the health angle, again, is the general one that applies to almost all of these. That reducing the energy expenditures reduces fossil fuel burning, which reduces the particulate matter and improves health.
Okay.
But I think what you raise is that many large hospitals are huge consumers of energy and aren't the best guardians of a sustainable future, and aren't the best at minimizing the negative effects on health that occur from burning fossil fuels. So they're certainly not exempt.
Well, for example, hospitals are very intensive energy users when it comes to vapor compression, which is air conditioning, because they have to maintain temperature constraints to keep bacteria from propagating. So you kind of throw energy efficiency out the window when that's the priority. So,
maybe we're off on a tangent, but it hasn't stopped Kaiser Permanente from becoming net zero in 2020. They went to net zero last year, and they're massive, and they have plenty of hospitals. So, I mean, it can still be done.
To me, the point is they paid attention to it and sort of,
Joe
is expressing what most hospitals and most organizations and what most individuals do is we don't really think about it. The whole point of tracking of benchmarking is to collect the data and promulgate the data so that interested people can see what's actually going on and start paying attention to it. You measure what matters. And so,
and hopefully the hospital's mortality rate is good.
Yeah, they definitely measure that.
Which is affected by air quality.
To equitable engagement on this one, because I think it's important to assist all sectors, not just those that are already doing this and have the staff and resources to be measuring and looking at bills. So we do want to be thinking about.
So maybe part of it is ensuring that there's available technical expertise to assist with us for organizations that are financially challenged.
So is that got to be added to the strategy?
Not sure. I'm adding that note under equitable engagement, and we'll want to think about
Including that in the strategy. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So we just have 3 more, and I see people are starting to come back to us. So we're winding down. Advocate for additional resources for energy efficiency upgrades from the General Assembly and via utility regulation. I think we've kind of addressed that before. Require retro commissioning for existing commercial buildings and require a building performance standard for existing commercial buildings. Is there any equity language that we want to add?
Is there anybody here from the utility department, the city of Richmond utilities? There was an issue, stormwater runoff fees were really hit hard on the Black community churches in some of our neighborhoods, and it really put them in the rears. And I was wondering how the city handled that. Alicia, do you know anything of that?
Bill, what I would say is, since we're running out of time and we want to get through these, we'll be happy to get an answer for you or connect you with the right folks, sort of sideline, if that's okay. But
No,
thanks for the
fine.
question.
Okay, so is there any other language that I need to capture to this?
The one thing I'm seeing now is that row 48 on retro commissioning, it sort of has the same issue as we talked about with benchmarking, as some organizations are going to need help doing this. They'll need technical and financial expertise to make that happen, or something like that.
All right. Well, thank you. Again, you guys were the first ones that, we kind of walked through this together with us. So really appreciate all of the thought-provoking conversation. If you think about other language, please let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And let me like to speak to that at all. Is there any additional instructions on homework? Okay.
Well, I guess we were asking it right as we were getting whisked out of our breakout room, if this document would be made available in the, not this one, the one we were just working on, the drafting strategies, if we wanted to put that in the shared folder so that if people wanted to keep making tweaks, or if we just wanted to leave that closed for staff to do.
I shared the document with the group for Objective 1. We do need to turn these around in a pretty short amount of time, but I think if folks want to go in, today and tomorrow, if they'd like, and put in maybe comments on the spreadsheet, we could incorporate those in time for the next step of review.
Okay, so why don't
I'll add that to the link real quick, or to the
great
chat. So that's the link to the drafting. Oops.
Excellent. And I'll send an email to those who had to leave or didn't join us, but really appreciate all of your feedback, all of your help with this. It's a lot of work and it's a big ask, so we're super grateful for you guys. Anyone have anything else to share? Oh, we have a baby to share.
We have a baby. Yeah, we have a baby.
There's little Riker.
But back to the important things. Our group did a really good job, I feel, of working with the recommendations. Is the community roundtable going to really do like a matrix check of, yes, this is for the community? Because we were less in on those impacts and more on editing the actual recommendation, if that makes sense. So are those going to pass through a community filter that validates, yes, this is beneficial for the larger community?
Yes, so there will actually be sort of two filters related to that. One is the community working group, which is a set of people who actually work in these fields like housing and health, and will actually be going through in small groups. So there will be a buildings and energy group, a transportation group, et cetera, of those folks who will be going through and sort of affirming, like, yes, that, you're right, that is related to this community priority, or maybe there's an opportunity to expand this somehow, looking for those sorts of things. And then the second maybe filter, if you want to think about it that way, will be the Racial Equity and Environmental Justice Roundtable, which is the group of folks who are being paid for their time and lived experience expertise, who will also review this content to make sure that, we know we have used some technical language, so that's something we're just dealing with. But, is this going to be relevant to the community? Will these kinds of strategies actually work in people's neighborhoods? That sort of thing. So there will be sort of two steps to that process.
Thank you.
And
That's
the
exactly what I
entire
wanted to
community
hear.
will look at it in April and provide their input too.
Great.
This is Carrie from
DMME. I had an observation just as we came back in terms of how the process worked. We spent a lot of time editing the first column into the second column, and then thinking about the community wealth building and neighborhood beautification, et cetera. And I think just in terms of time management, the way that the columns are structured of the screening, the racial question comes at a farther out column. And I don't think we got to that as much, just because that column wasn't like up front. So we talked about community wealth building, and I forget what the second one was, affordable housing, I think it was. And then the third one was neighborhood beautification. And then the fourth one, I think, was race. And
Carrie, that was by design, because the community group is going to be going over all of them with those 3 priorities. So we were focusing on the first 4, but
right. But even to it seemed like the fact that the race column was the 4th one, we didn't get to spend as much time to make sure that the language we were using was considering a racial component.
Brianne, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I was going to ask Brianne, do you want to explain that maybe a little bit more to help? So Carrie, it's a great observation, first of all. So very insightful, and our team very purposefully set the spreadsheet up that way to guide the conversation. And maybe Brianne can help sort of build on Dawn's explanation a little more.
Yeah, I don't have much to add on the logistics side of things. Like Dawn said, we did for this group prioritize the consideration of the 4 more topical community priorities of community wealth, affordable housing, neighborhoods, and health. And then if there was time, go to what we were sort of classifying as the more procedural aspects of racial equity and equitable engagement and government accountability, because the community working group is focusing on those 3 with actual objectives and strategies that will be cross-cutting to the entire RVAgreen 2050 plan. I think also part of this is the first time y'all are the first group to go through this, so it's really good feedback to hear that in terms of the time that you weren't able to get to as much of that. So we'll definitely, take that in for the next few groups. And then I think the third sort of consideration here is that many of the first 4 topical community priorities actually do get at the racial equity topic, because as we think about things like affordable housing, we see that our African American and Black communities and our Hispanic and Latino communities are more likely to be facing things like eviction and higher energy bills. So we are in a roundabout way getting to the racial equity part of this, even though we might not have had enough time today to explicitly use language around that community priority. But that's always something that we can come back and add. This will not be the last time that we look at the strategy language.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone. I appreciate your time, and we will see you in 3 weeks. I'll follow up with an email so there's more opportunity to get your feedback, but otherwise have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.